Hi. Hello. I hope you had good beers yesterday. Thank you for coming that early this morning. And I'm going to talk to you about a work that a few of us started a while back, which is reimplementing one of the pieces of software that we all have in our computers. So the Coreutils. So I will go through the history of that project, explain what we are trying to do, the why, and maybe do a demo. Let's see what happens. So who I am. I'm doing a lot of things, way too many things according to my partner. I'm a Debian developer for like 15 years, LLVM for 10 years. I'm also, my actual job is I'm a director at Mozilla. I'm doing 2,000 things every day. But that work is clearly unrelated to what we are doing at Mozilla. Don't tweet saying Mozilla is working on that stuff. I will get in trouble. I don't want to get into troubles. But it's not a Mozilla project. But I've been working with Rust developer for a long time. I manage some key people in the Rust project. And in Paris, we had the chance to have a bunch of people who worked on Rust for 10 years. So I have been in touch with those developers for a long time. I also uploaded the initial version of Rust in Debian a long time ago. And if you don't know about packaging, you can package a software when you are not an expert in the language it has been written in. I know that sounds crazy, but I'm not a C++ compiler developer, but I'm maintaining Clang for like 10 years or so. And I'm also maintaining some of the most common Rust packages in the Debian archive for a long time, and therefore Ubuntu. But yeah, let's talk about what happened. If you remember, something weird happened 3 years ago now. Most of the planet went on lockdown in our country, in France, and I think it was the same in Belgium and Italy and some country. They decided to close everything. So I don't know what you have done on your side, but I asked myself, what can I do with that free time that I had? So some people make bread. So I stole a picture from Julien d'Anjou. He made some fancy bread. Who did bread here? Yeah, a few. Cool. Béranger too. Some other did some woodworking, so I stole a picture from someone who used to work at Red Hat, but now he's working at Mozilla, Serge. He did some woodworking. The picture is ugly, it's not my fault, but some people did that stuff, some people did gardening. And myself, what I've done, it's my son on the top right. He loves Lego, but he's destroying everything. Everything was put in the single bucket, and we decided to rebuild the Lego. So it kept us busy for like 3 or 4 days. And then, still have to work, but my partner decided to, we are 40 something, and she decided to rewatch Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I have a good memory for TV shows, so I was like, yeah, I don't want to watch it again. So, and then she did also that. So you can do the math, it's like 204 hours. And it's basically, I use that time to work on Rust. Because she was watching that stuff, and I already saw all the episodes when I was younger. So yeah, wanted to learn Rust. So before, what I've done 10 years ago is I worked on that fancy project, which was at the beginning of Clang, when it was just starting to support some basic C++. I packaged it into Debian, and then I rebuilt the Debian archive. Instead of GCC, I used Clang, and got me a job at Mozilla at the end, and a lot of fun, and I'm still doing that stuff, even if I should stop at some point. So the idea of that project was how can you replace a compiler by another one? Well, like, yeah, I'd like to do the same with Rust. I'm not a student anymore, so I don't want to do projects that are useless. So I want to work on something interesting. So I started thinking about what can I do? So the first one is, do I want to rewrite the glibc in Rust? Like, maybe not, it's probably too hard. The kernel, Clang, LLVM, it's crazy. There is no way I can do that. And nobody is going to be interested in those projects. So I was like, what about the Coreutils? So one of the things of the Coreutils that initially I didn't know anything about that stuff. So I was like, oh, it's probably full of assembly. I don't want to learn assembly. I don't want to read assembly. But at the end, there is no assembly in Coreutils. There is just one file that I don't care about that one anyway. I'm good. But yeah, some people are going to say, why are you doing that? It's pointless. So yeah, it makes sense. You can think about that stuff, but the first one is why not? Like we all had crazy ideas in our careers, and this one is one of them. Rust is amazing, so it can bring some value, and you will hear during that talk me repeating that stuff many times. I'd like to, I will repeat that stuff a few times, but the GNU implementation is fantastic. People doing that work are amazing, they are giant, and we always hear that Rust is amazing at security. At Mozilla, we keep repeating that stuff, but for the GNU implementation, it's not an argument. They had only 17 CVE for the last 20 years, so it's not about security, the reimplementation. And it's not about the license. I know that some company cares a lot about license. Myself, as soon as I can upload it into Debian, I'm fine, but some people love debating how the GPL or MIT are amazing, or they suck, depending on who you talk to. Or I am not interested to have that debate. I leave that debate to Reddit or the other one. And last but not least, it is super interesting. I hope during that presentation I will be able to convince you to contribute and to write patches. It's not that hard. I will even do a demo of fixing a bug live, hopefully. So, I keep talking about that stuff, but I think you all have a basic understanding, at least, of what are the Coreutils. So we'll start with a quiz. So, who was born before 2000 in that room? I see a lot of gray hair. Oh yeah, a bunch of people. After 90, who was born after 90? Yes, and after 80? After 71? Ah. So congrats, you are younger than the initial implementation of the Coreutils. Yeah. So the first version was published by Ken Thompson in 70. So thanks to Software Heritage, the archive done by INRIA and a lot of actors, you can see the sources of the initial implementation. As you can see, the .s means assembly. I won't share any assembly code today, don't worry, but you can look at the source and it's pretty amazing to see that that code has been written 53 years ago. So Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie, they worked on that stuff a long time ago. And what we are doing right now, and you can generalize to most of the thing in text, is that we are building stuff on the shoulder of those giants. So those two folks, they invented things that we are still using on a daily basis, like we all use CP, MV, and all that stuff. Even if you don't know about it, your system is probably going to use it behind. I will also mention that this podcast is very good from Adam Gordon Bell, who is interviewing Brian Kerrigan, talking about the history of the Unix operating system. So those folks, they wrote a new implementation of those commands in 72. So mostly C. So you can see that, for example, CP and the if command were written in C. The code is surprisingly easy to read. So this one is a source from, again, 50 years ago of chmod. I'm sure that if you know a bit of C, you can read it. And found that fascinating to see that the code those folks wrote 50 years ago, I'm showing it at FOSDEM in 2023, and it's still relevant, and people can relate to that code. And you can ask yourself, is your code you are writing today still going to be valuable in 50 years? Probably not, but those folks, they made it. And it's probably going to stay for a long time. And this one is the actual implementation of the chmod function in the function written in 72. So it's not crazy code. It's full of bugs, probably. But it worked, and it is what started Unix a long time ago. And what I found surprising listening to that podcast is also how amazing a programming language the Coreutils and those commands are. We take that for granted, but when you think about it, when you use sort, unique, cat, and all that stuff, it allows you to do some crazy thing very quickly. So let's take a few seconds and think, I give you a text file, and you want to tell me what is the 5 most common words in the Shakespeare books longer than 6 chars. We can all do that stuff. It's probably 6, 7 lines of Python, same in Rust and same in those sort of languages. But if you do that in Bash, in Coreutils with Bash, it is that command. And when you think about it, it's very impressive that pipe and redirection are the key things that we are doing, and how easy it is to program on a daily basis. All your system is running that kind of stuff on a daily basis, and it makes it super easy. I'm not saying that it is great, because it's not fault tolerant. If you have the single error in that command, everything is going to break and you are not going to get what you want. But still, you can do that kind of things very quickly and very easily. So by the way, the results are those ones. So in Shakespeare, more than five letters. Is shoot, father, accent. I don't know how to pronounce that one, so I had to Google what it means. It means that you leave the scene. So that is what it means in English for Shakespeare, before and master. And it's pretty funny to do that stuff. I did it until 8 characters, and it's quite interesting to see what Shakespeare used in terms of words. So now let's talk about today. My brother is a history teacher, I'm not. So I will talk about what we have now. So we have 105 commands in the implementation. In the glue implementation, we are trying to reach that level. You are very familiar with many of those. Some of them you probably never heard of. And I'd like also to remind that what is in the Coreutils can be weird. So sometimes you don't have find, in the Coreutils you don't have find, less, stops, and all those commands, but you have some other things. And most of these commands, they come up with arguments which sometimes are conflicting with each other, sometimes are completely changing the argument of the behavior of the command depending on what you enter. So second quiz. So who knows about those commands? So ls, cp, mv. Everybody, sure. And then this one, probably two. Now we are starting with the hard stuff. Num format. So it's a command that there is one of the maintainers of the project with myself, so of course he knows. But pretty much it's the only one. So it's the kind of stuff that we have to deal with because we want to be a drop team replacement for the GNU project. But we have those kind of things. And who knows about PR? Yeah, one guy. So someone else. Bravo. Convert text files for printing. So it is one of that command, and it has a huge number of arguments, which are probably conflicting with each other. So C-split, who knows about Daniel knows. Yeah, just a few people in that room. So it is to split a file into sections determined by the context line. Yeah, it's cryptic, right? Yeah, it's weird. And we have plenty of others. So we have factors to do math. We have Pinky. I don't remember what he's doing. Tsort is doing some kind of search, shuffle. Shred. Shred is to really remove the data of a file on the hard drive. Sec is more common, but still I rarely see that one in scripts. And so we have a bunch of implementation of the Coreutils available on the market. So the most common that everybody knows is the GNU implementation. There are BSD, which is used on Mac, for example. BusyBox is the one when you want to use on embedded devices or when you want to recover a system. Toybox is one of the core developers of BusyBox decided to rewrite Toybox because he was sick of license discussion. I learned recently that there is a VLang implementation. Don't ask me what is VLang, I don't know. And if you are aware of other implementation, please let me know. I will tell you why I want to know. So let's talk about our implementation. So it was started by Jordi, I will butcher his name, but Bociano in 2013, before version 1.0. I sent an email to Jordi because he has a .b email address saying, I'm going to present the work that you started 10 years ago at FOSDEM. And he said, oh, cool, glad to hear that this project is still alive. Myself, I found it in early 2020, so before COVID, and then I started contributing in April. Remember that COVID started in Europe in March, so it's not a coincidence. Now, here is the size of the project, so we have 13,000 stars, and we have 350 contributors. The second contributor to that project, you see his picture with a white background, is over there. Well done, Terz, for your amazing work. He's the one reviewing hard PR. I'm doing the easy one, because I'm not a very good developer in general. Now it's packaged in most of the distro. Obviously, it's not a coincidence in Debian and Ubuntu, but Fedora, Gentoo, and most of them. It is shipping in Apertis, which is a Linux distro for cars, which between you and me found that scary that they are using our work in production. But I'm always the imposter syndrome in terms of development. And it's used by a social network through the Yocto project. So it's not Facebook, the famous social network. It's another one, and they are making glasses and so on. So I think you can guess who they are. But they are using that to take pictures in the glasses. And this one is for license reasons. So now I'm doing some product placement for one of the Mozilla achievement Rust. So why do we want to do it in Rust? It's you don't have to worry about security issue. At Mozilla, on Firefox in particular, we see security issue caused by C and C++, not on a daily basis, but almost. And you should not do C and C++ anymore if you care about security. It's very portable. It's one of the things that I learned with that project is we are supporting a lot of configuration, a lot of operating system, and Rust is really amazing for that. It was one of my big discovery. It's obvious probably for some of the Rust developers in the room, but for me it was a surprise. And I really don't like to invent the wheel, so we can leverage a lot of crates which have been developed by very talented people over the years. So LSColor, for example, is used by LSD or EXA probably to provide the same color as LS. And we are reusing that stuff in the Rust Coreutils. Worked here to do a recursive operation on the directory. We are reusing that crate, so we don't have to worry about that one. Temp file, we use it for mktemp, for example. So if you look at the sources of the GNU Coreutils, they have to re-implement everything by themselves. Sometimes they use that in some libraries, but they have to rewrite a lot of things. While for us, we can reuse what others have been doing. And last but not least, we have amazing performances. I will do a demo later of some of the performances that we have, but surprisingly, we are, in some cases, we are significantly faster than the GNU implementation. And it's a very popular language. No need to explain why, but we have a lot of contributors, and sometimes we are struggling to keep up with the number of pull requests, just because of everybody wants to learn Rust, and you should if you don't, but it's very popular. So what is the goal of this specific implementation? So when I took over that project a few years ago, I had exactly the same idea in mind as Chris Latner and Apple did back then with Clang, is to be a drop-in replacement. So if you're not aware of that story, when Apple decided to work on Clang, one of their goals is to be a pure drop-in replacement for GCC in general for most of the options. And it has been one of the success. You just had to overwrite the CC or CXX variable, and you could use Clang directly. And if it was not working, it was a bug for most of the cases. So it works surprisingly well. Now Clang is a de facto standard for compiling most of the very complex applications, like Chrome or Firefox. What can we do to replicate that? So with the Coreutils, we focus on that one, to be a drop-in replacement. We want that stuff to be cross-platform. It has been decided before my time as the lead of the project, but I love the idea, so we support those operating system. We are struggling with a FreeBSD CI because it sucks on GitHub, but besides that, it's working pretty well. All those, except for Fuchsia, we have CI for every one of them, so for every PR, we run a lot of tests on those. It's very easy to test. So on my laptop, running the full test suite takes less than a minute, and it's covering a lot of part of the code. I will share some of the code coverage information. I don't care about it. Some people do. For some people, it's a strength. For some people, it's a weaknesses, but it's an MIT license so that social network can reuse, steal our code to save money. Anyway, I'm not interested in having that debate. And in my opinion, and I haven't seen anyone in the community using that argument, it's not a fight against the GNU project or the FSF. The GNU project has been doing a lot of good things for us in the open source world for 20 or 30 years. So it's, we are standing on their shoulder. It's not a fight. I know that some GNU Coreutils developer are monitoring that project for a long time. They have been very friendly and so on. And I met Jim Meyering 10 years or 20 years ago, and I was very impressed by that person. So yeah, it's not about fighting, it's about collaboration. So when I started that project 2 or 3 years ago, my initial goal were I want to be able to boot a Debian on it. So my laptop here is running the GNU Coreutils now, for example. So it's not, I'm not lying, or it's working well now. Then it was to install the top 1,000 packages in Debian. So if I wanted to do that, is that Debian has a lot of script to configure the package. We call that postinst, and they are usually done in Bash and using the sort and cp and mv and install. So it's exercising a lot of feature of the GNU Coreutils. And one of the goals was also to build 3 of the big projects that I care about, so Linux, LLVM, and Firefox, obviously. So we don't use that much scripting, so Bash or Coreutils, but I still found some bugs building the Linux kernel, some corner cases. And of course, package it into Debian and Ubuntu. I published some blog about it. They have been shared on a bunch of places. I had some interesting comments, some of them not very interesting, but anyway. So to achieve those goals, we had to deploy a CI, add code coverage support, improve the code coverage. So it's one of the things to get familiar with the project. I wrote a lot of unit tests. So now the code coverage of our implementation is 80%. If you don't know much about code coverage, 80% is usually what we are trying to achieve in a project. It means that the code coverage is very good. It's very hard to reach 100%, and sometimes it's a waste of time, but 80 is usually considered as being a very good code coverage. I think on Firefox we are at 65 or 70, something like that. And we plugged a bunch of tools. I'm in love with static analysis, linting, so of course I had to do that for that project. And we also documented a lot of those processes. Everybody loves about docs, so we wrote plenty of docs. And it took about a year to reach that state. So now the current status. So what we have, you have a CI that is running for every PR, and we run our implementation against the GNU test suite. This is the latest graph, so you can see that we have been working a lot on improving the compatibility. We are not there yet. I will fix one of them with you later during that presentation, but there is no silver bullet. For many of those, you have to spend a few hours to fix one, and you improve one by one. Before you ask the question, the skip is mostly that it is SC Linux, so cp, mv, and some command or chmod. They are using SC Linux, and GitHub Action uses Ubuntu, and Ubuntu doesn't have by default, so it's tricky to test that stuff into the CI. If you know how to do it, please reach out to us. I'd like to fix that stuff. So how do we work? As I said many times, we want that stuff to be a drop team replacement. So we wrote a many wrapper to make it super easy. So that command that I share is going to run the not owner test for the touch command on GNU. So it's going to use the GNU test and run it against our implementation. So it's super easy to test. And we wrote some script to make our life easier. So we have a Python script which is going to tell us here is the to-do list. If you do it, it's several pages because we still have a lot of tests to fix. And we wrote also a fancy page. I can show you what it looks like. So here it is. We have the list of all the tests for each command. And of course, the big one is MISC, where we have the mix. So sometimes it's just a one-line change in the code. Sometimes it's a big refactor. It really depends. It's part of the fun. You never know what you are going to get. So let's use an example, for example, for mkdir. So this is the GNU output. So you do -p. Who knows what is -p in that one? Okay, cool. So you create a recursive, and V is verbals. Everybody knows that. So in the GNU implementation, they decided to do it directory by directory. You can argue that maybe it's not a good use, it's not smart, maybe it is, who cares, it's legacy. We have to deal with legacy. So our implementation was that one. So you can argue that maybe ours was better or worse, who cares? But we updated that code, so we match exactly what GNU is doing. So if you look, I will share the slide after. You can look at the change. It's pretty easy to understand. This one is one of my favorite. So in Debian, when you install LibreOffice, it is using AppArmor, and someone decided that instead of doing a touch, you do install dev null, which creates an empty file. It's legacy also. Do I want to fix legacy everywhere? Probably not. So it was one of my favorite bugs, so I started investigating. So here is some Rust code which reproduce that issue. So if you do a copy of Daniel into a text file, it is failing with source path is not an existing regular file. So I open a bug upstream. The thread is quite interesting. Like people in the Rust community are very passionate about that kind of thing. Too long didn't read, it hasn't been fixed. So here is a workaround. It's ugly, but if you know a better way to do it, besides fixing Rusty and dealing with the fallout of the fix, this is the best that we have. So we are looking if the input is dev null. If it is dev null, we are creating an empty file. Yeah, it is what it takes to deal with legacy. So let's do a demo together. So please bear with me. It's going to be fun with the mic. Alors. So, uppercase. Sure. Crap. Just switch to Alacrity, and I never remember the shortcut to increase the font. Haha. Okay, this one. Better? Cool. So, this is not the GNU version that I'm running. You can see I'm running our implementation. So we are working third release the 0.0, 17 2 weeks ago, something like that, 1 week ago. So we are using that implementation of it. So when I took the train to come here, I looked at the test suite and was like, I will try to find a cool bug for the demo. So I found one, and I want to show you what it is. Because I don't always remember the command, because I'm a font of a crowd, I don't want to look stupid, so I did a pense bête, as we say in French. So here is building some stuff. So what I'm testing right now is a sort command. The sort command has some fancy flag. So this is a command from the GNU project. So I will show you what the test looks like on the GNU side. So here is the test. So of course we have the GPL3 header on top, and then there is a list of files with version name, and so we have the on the top we have the input. So for in, and below we have the expected one. So the command that they are testing is a stable sort with a sort by version. So sort. And same for ls. There is you can specify what kind of sort you want. And of course, doing sort of version is super complex, and we can bullshit about that stuff for hours. I love it. So here is what they are testing. So of course, as you can see, it failed on our side. And why did it fail? Oh, so it seems that it is complaining that 5.4.0 it's not sorted the same way as 5.04. Super interesting, isn't it, right? So basically it means that we are sorting that version differently. Of course, it's obvious that it is the same version, and in theory it should be equal, but when you are sorting, in those cases, equal doesn't mean anything, so you need to make a decision. And of course, we decided to do otherwise, because I think the person who did the implementation didn't realize that GNU was doing something different. So let's try to fix that together. So what I like to do, I don't know how other contributors to the Rust project are doing, is that I like to have test cases. So what I'm doing is I'm creating some basic command to be able to reproduce that easily so that I don't have to run the test. So I spare you the details, so here is the test case. Let me do that right now. So I've got my test file. So what I'm doing is I'm forcing the full path to use the GNU implementation. I use the two arguments that we mentioned earlier. And now I have the input and the output. In theory, if I do a diff, it should be empty. And it is. I love when demo works well. It's just the beginning, so I will probably have fucked up at some point. So now I want to test the GNU implementation. Our implementation, the rest one. So here it is. So now I have a simple test case that I can work on. So I don't have to rerun the test suite. I don't have to do anything else. It's one of the things that I love with that project, and that's why I'm not doing Rust code at Mozilla, is because I'm not a very good developer, and Firefox is super complex, and that stuff is pretty easy to do. You can do that on the train to come here, for example, work on it. It's taking this one, it's probably going to take 20 minutes to fix. Well, there is a weird thing at the end, but I'm not going to spoil you the surprise yet. Anyway, this is the code that I have. So let's dive in now into the actual code. So let's use GDB. So GDB and Rust works very well. So if I do a run, yeah, it works. If I do a breakpoint on main, yeah, it works. Next. Here it is. You can see the Rust code. You can evaluate the variable. It's working super well. So I won't look for the function. I already did that for you. So I already know the function where to put the breakpoint. So it's version underscore CMP. Our code is pretty well written, so I guess you all understand what version CMP is doing. It's comparing version. So now I continue the execution, and then I'm in the function doing it. So if I look at A, I see that it is that string. So the first one, if I look at B, here it is. So I have the two string. So I will move in quick mode. There is the execution. So we have the version compare. And here is the function that I care about. So I will scroll, but you see in that function, it's probably what I care about, because it is, if you don't know about Rust, it is going to trim the 0 at the beginning. So obviously, in that case, it is what I'm looking for, so I want to remove the 0 at first. So let's fix that code now. I learned from one of my colleagues at Mozilla that Nano is the best text editor, so I'm following the example. Yeah, exactly. It's the best, right? So here it is. I remove the trim. Of course, it's going to break something else after. But I'm confident that it works, so let's rebuild that stuff. So here it is. It's rebuilding. It is what the file that I touch is used in, it's a U core, so it's one of our basic library to do file management and so on. So it's normal that it is rebuilding the various dependencies. Yeah, not GDB. I want without GDB, please. That one. And did it work? Yeah, it worked. Cool. I fixed a bug. So very proud of myself. You see, I love how geeks love versioning comparison. We all love that stuff. So now the funny story is, of course, because it would be too easy. Now I'm not going to run the full test suite, even if it takes less than a minute, but I'm just going to run that test because I know that that one fails. So ls has the same function, but ls has a different expectation in terms of version sorting. So of course that test is going to fail because ls likes the 0 before instead of the other one. So of course that test fails. So one of the fixes that we could do is in the version compare, we could have, do we want 0 to be first or do we want 0 to be after, doing a Boolean. And when there is, so because I don't like the version comparison function is on our tree. So I'm like, oh, I think it's dumb, someone else did it. Of course, there is a crate doing it. So I reach out to the developer saying, can you add an option to change the sort when it is a 0? So upstream made fun of me, but they have a PR ready, so they will probably end it. So we are going to remove 100 of line of code and use that crate, because it is what we want to do. We don't want to maintain a comparison of version, because who cares, right? So let's come back to the presentation. So performances. Benchmarking performances is hard. I know that in the room we have some Mozilla experts in performances, and they are not going to contradict me that when I say that benching is hard. But we're using Hyperfine. We can see that, for example, the start is almost 5 times faster than the GUI implementation, because some people spend a lot of time improving it in our code, but also in the crate. So that one is basically taking all Shakespeare books, the text file, making it random and sort it. So we are significantly faster than the GNU implementation. Similarly, if you do a recursive LS or a recursive CP, we are 1.5 faster than GNU. It's probably because the code generated by Rusty is it's much better than the one and written by GNU for a long time. But I don't want to pretend that we are always doing better. For example, the factor function, we are significantly slower than the GNU implementation 5 times. I don't know who uses the command factor. I learned about that command when I started contributing, but still, we want to be a good wrapping replacement, and that one is very slow. So I'm going to do another demo using, I'm going to do some product placement for a project called Simply. The author of that project works at Mozilla. He's in the room, so if you need anything, don't blame me, blame him. And I will do a quick demo about how can you do a proper benchmarking of performances. And I will try to find how to do the paranoid perf kernel change. That one. I love the SH. So I just did a recursive LS with a command called Simply. So basically it is going to instrument it, and it's going to upload into the Firefox profiler the analysis of that program. So I will zoom in a second. So here it is. I think Mozilla did like 4 presentations of the profiler today, so if you haven't seen any, I'm going to do a quick demo. Anyway, so it is one of the magic things of Rust, is that we can easily do that stuff. You saw how long it took. I will show you the command again that I run. It is that one. So simply record the binary and the argument. So it's very easy. If I try to do that with C and another language, it's going to take forever, but Rust and Simply makes that so easy. So here I have the flame graph, so I can see that for a recursive LS, most of the time that we are spending is in display grid. So most of the time that LS is going to spend is not reading at the file or reading the metadata, it's just doing computation about how do you want to show the result into the terminal. And one of the amazing things is that it's going to, I can look at the source directly and see the counters, and I can easily benchmark that stuff. So if you are into performances in Rust, you can use Simply and the Firefox profiler to do it. And again, I'm not here as Mozilla, but it's very valuable for any project. It's not Mozilla related, and it makes that stuff super easy. So we have also some fancy documentation. Tert in the room did most of the work. So one of the things that he did that I love is that one of the things that I really struggled at first when I became a Unix developer like 20 years ago is that I never knew how to do example and find the example. So Tert linked to tldr.sh where it's providing example for every command. So for example, here it's base 64, you have example, but I'm going to use a command that I didn't know about, shred. You have example for shred, so you don't have to Google on Stack Overflow how to do that stuff. You have that out of the box in our documentation. So we have development documentation. I won't go through it for a matter of time. But one of the things, we are taking the liberty also to extend the GNU Coreutils, so we don't want to break compatibility, but we are doing some fancy thing like progress bar, because who doesn't love progress bar? So for example, of course, it is that one. So we have a fancy progress bar now. You don't have that upstream. So it's, you can thank the guy, he's over there. I haven't done anything. But before the talk, he came to me and said, I looked at the implementation, at the patch that wasn't merged in GNU. And that patch was very hard to understand. If you look at the diff on the Rust side, even if you don't know about Rust, you will understand it because we are relying on a crate. I think the upstream developer of the crate called Indicative is at FOSDEM also, so thank you for your hard work. So here is what kind of stuff we can do. We can do it for MV, and MV is interesting because if you are moving file between one file system to the other, it's not always super fast. We are also implementing some tools that GNU doesn't have, so B3 sum, for example, because it's like B2 sum, so it's a hash algorithm. And cut-w, someone contributed that patch recently. It's a function, it's one of the options from BSD that GNU doesn't have. And we're like, yeah, why not? So what is next? We want to implement the missing option for the various binary. It's not hard, it's fun. We try to be nice. I'm not always nice, but I try to. We want to have a full compatibility with GNU. So the list that I show you, I'd like that to be fully green at some point. It's going to take years, but it's fun. Improve the performances on some key programs, like for example for Factor. I don't know if we want to spend too much time, but there are other things where we could improve the performances. And if you're interested, that link is the most interesting one to know where to start. It's well documented. If you are a student, we are probably going to apply for the Google Summer of Code. And if someone is interested in sponsoring that project, if your company or your foundation is interested, I'd like to buy some credits on GitHub Action to build faster, because running the GNU Street takes about an hour. And I think we are using a lot of resources, so it would be nice to have a faster CI. And now I'd like to predict the future. It's easy, right? So the Linux kernel, they landed the first support of Rust inside the tree. So if you do some stat on Linux Git repo, you see that they have Rust. So there is only 37 files upstream. It's mostly glue, so how do you manage memory and compatibility with the system and support for the build system. We hope that they are going to land something in mainline soon, a feature, but is it going to happen this year or not? We don't know, and some people are still challenging Rust in the Linux kernel. The main argument that I heard is mainly for legacy system. And, but my prediction is that next year we will start to see more and more distro vendor or cloud company to ship with some more and more Rust code. Probably I'm pretty sure that some Linux distro are going to ship in the cloud our implementation in the next few years. So thanks for your time. I'd like to remind that it is not a Mozilla project, so please don't say Mozilla works on that. It will make my life easier, and I think we have a few minutes for questions. Here, I think you need the badge. You can. Okay. I can read the question. Oui, David. Okay.
So I'm going to ask the obvious question. You mentioned dependencies, supply chain attack.
Like what? Sorry. Supply chain attack. Oh, well, it's recorded, but I will say it. It's an issue for every Rust project currently. The fact that Cargo is amazing at updating dependency is many of the Rust projects are subject to supply chain attack lately, and we are no exception. So I can do product placement. If you, Mozilla has developed a tool called CargoVet, which mitigates that stuff, but it's too complex to deploy for a hobby like this one. So yeah, you can do supply chain attack in our project, but we don't merge the depend-about pull request immediately. We are trying to mitigate that by taking our time. Any other question? Yeah, two over there. Yeah, please.
What's the code size compared to BusyBox?
The code size compared to BusyBox, I don't know. With GNU, it's similar. So you have different ways to compile the project. So the trick that I'm using in Debian for the package is that I'm building a single binary and I'm doing symlink. So if you do a symlink from Coreutils to CP or to NS, the binary is going to understand that you are calling CP. So the size is comparable to the GNU implementation in that case. But because of the nature of Rust, the binaries are bigger than the rest. Another question? Yeah, it's a question. It's a question that comes back often. Yeah.
Do you compute the code coverage only on the passing tests or all of them?
We run code coverage on everything, including the GNU test suite. Okay. So it takes an hour and a half.
Also the tests that are failing?
Yeah, we test everything. Yeah.
Did you find any bugs in the original GNU implementation when doing the reimplementation?
Yeah, we have a contributor who found 2 or 3 bugs in the upstream implementation, and they have been fixed upstream, reported and fixed upstream. Yeah.
Okay, one more real quick.
Have you had any need to use unsafe? And if yes, can you give a few examples in which kind of areas?
We have some unsafe when we are calling the libc. Some function of the libc, we are calling it directly, so we have some unsafe. You agree? Yeah. Tert, I'm going to repeat what he said. He said that it's for the libc. It's mostly native calls.
Have you looked at code complexity metrics like cyclomatic complexity? Because I guess with the error handling, the memory management and cleanup in C is often really messy, and that could be a huge boon in maintainability.
Yeah, we have some code that clearly needs refactoring. So for example, in LS, we have to work around the limitation of clap, and the code complexity here is getting more and more complex. So yeah, that project needs some pieces of our implementation needs refactoring to decrease it. But the code is usually pretty easy to understand.
Thanks.
Okay, I think we're out of time.
Thank you all. Don't hesitate to contribute. You can find my email easily.